Hey everybody, welcome back to the PD Res channel, where today we're going to take a look at the A-Fixed car around Homestead. Now, these cars are, for me, a lot more fun than they were last time we were here. I still really struggle at this track. I cannot put down a really solid qualifying lap to save my neck, but I'm decent in the race. So, kind of a trade-off for me. I'm curious to see if any of you are the same or if you're the exact opposite. If you're somebody that can qualify really well and then fall off in the race. Either way, whatever kind of driver you end up being at this track, I think this guide's going to help you out some. Now, the reason I say these cars are a lot more fun for me is because they tend to get loose at the back, and it takes some more steering input and being careful with your right foot and the throttle to really get the car planted and able to corner and get the most out of the car. Last time we were here, the cars were so unbelievably tight that it was just chuck it into the corner, wait, and then get back to the power. And I'm much happier with this setup. Hey guys, quick pause here, editing me here. Just wanted to say I forgot to say my brake bias and steering ratio. Brake bias I moved all the way to 63, and I'm running a 14:1 steering ratio because it gives me a little bit more control over the back of the car when I'm trying to really hang it out on the top side of the track. And the brake bias is kind of hit or miss. You don't really use the brakes except for to settle the car on a later run. You don't really use them to slow down. You do most of that by just breathing out of the throttle and letting the car rotate and slow down. So brake bias is not your key to pace. So hopefully we'll all enjoy this track a little more this week. Let's take a quick look at the track map here. Although not immediately noticeable, turns 1 and 2 are a little bit different from turns 3 and 4. So because of the basic shape of the corners here, as you go through them, right when you get to the middle of the corner, it's going to feel like the corner's closing in, like it's tightening up, and it kind of is. As soon as you hit the midpoint of the corner, it feels like it starts to open up. And it feels that way on both ends of the track. The main difference between turns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 being, if you look really closely, about midway through turn 3, you'll see that it's not quite as symmetrical as the other side of the racetrack. So turn 3 feels a little bit awkward to get into. If you're trying to run the high side, it's a little bit tougher to get the car properly into the corner and not ride up and hit that wall, because it does feel like the track tightens up just a little bit and then it kind of opens up and feels pretty normal from about the exit of turn 3 into turn 4 and then back out. Because the corners here are so long, and for some reason to me these corners just feel like they go on forever and ever. But one of the really neat ways that you can find out kind of where you are in the corner is by using the caution lights as a reference that are on the outside walls. In the middle of both ends of the track, right near the apex of the corner, there's going to be a caution light. And that's where you can expect the car to feel like it's at its tightest right before it loosens back up and kind of changes direction. We also cannot talk about Homestead and not talk about the fact that it is one of the tracks that has progressive banking. So what that means is that the banking as you go up towards the wall from the apron steadily increases. So there's more banking up at the top of the racetrack than there is in those bottom 2 lanes. This lets the high side of the racetrack really pay off for just, kind of staying into the throttle, balancing the car, and carrying a lot more momentum through the corner and onto those exits down the long straightaways. At the same time, because of the shape of the corners, how we discussed how they're tightest right in the middle and then they feel like they open back up, because of that, you can really dive them in and get down to that second lane, and you can kind of cut some distance off if somebody's running the top side. You'll find that because you're taking a shorter line around the track, you'll kind of chop away at some of their lead on you, and you'll be able to come up closer behind them out of the corner, but you'll have a little bit less momentum. So it's a good trade-off. That's one of the fun things about the track. It's the trade-off between ripping the high side of the track versus trying to cut some distance out. Now, one cool thing to take a note of is if you look where the 6 car is right now, there's a seam in the racetrack, and he's going to drive down to another seam in the racetrack. So those are areas where the asphalt comes together and has been kind of met with another layer, and it creates this seam of somewhat bumpy pavement, but it really does actually affect the balance and the characteristic of the car as it's going through the corner. You can use those seams as kind of a reference to know when you go from one to the other, then you're increasing banking. And you actually really can feel it, and we'll talk more about that after we watch the lap. So since I went ahead and brought it up, I'll show the lap, and we'll do our usual. I'll stay quiet for the first one, and then we'll talk about it more in depth. Coming across the line to set a 31.448, it's good enough for mid-pack in a top split race. Like I said, I really struggle here, so I'm hoping that I can improve this as we go. So to start the qualifying lap, you're going to take the top side of the track. That'll let you carry the most momentum around that corner, and you'll carry the most speed onto this straight to start your lap. Now here, this caution light up here is where I'm pretty much starting my turn in if I'm trying to run the lower part of the track, which you're going to want to use for your qualifying lap. Top side is no good for qualifying because you're going around a longer distance and it's just taking more time. So for here, I know that once I pass this caution light, I'm going to pretty much start my turn in. But you're going to keep the power on. And as you drive down into the corner, it'll help start the car to rotate through, but it won't really get loose. You're not going to get loose so much on the entry phase, trying to take the low line. You'll get looser on the exit phase of the corner. So keep the power on till probably the middle of turn 1 and then breathe out of the throttle. And you'll see that we kind of play with the throttle when we get back to it. We don't immediately go back to full throttle, and we try to make sure the car's going to stick, and then we power it out. Now, as we drive down into the corner, here's the second caution light I was telling you about that is pretty much in the middle of the corner. So right around this point is where I'll start being more aggressive with the throttle because the car should have finished its rotation and it should have changed direction now, and we should be heading into turn 3, so the corner will feel like it's opening up a bit and we're able to get back to it. Now here you see I had to kind of predict what the car was going to do. I knew that as I got up on that third line of banking there, that the car was going to jump loose on me. So I kind of prepared for that, and I wound out of the steering just a little bit so that I wouldn't lose the car. Now that you know to look for them, here's our next caution light, and as we come down into the corner, we're just now passing our last caution light that we're going to use as a reference. And once again, same thing, as the car gets up into that progressive banking, it does jump loose as you transition from one level of banking to the next. Now I also wanted to talk about how to run the top side, kind of what to look for, how to place the car where you want it, and what are some of the advantages to running up in the high lane. So one of the advantages, like I said, is going to be your momentum on corner exit, and you'll see that coming off this corner. But here, so we kind of drive down, let the car rotate, but don't go below that seam. Kind of hang the car right there, and you can see we have to be patient with the throttle, expect the car to get a little bit looser, and you're constantly playing with the steering to get the car balanced. And there you can see as we pass the 2, we've got some extra momentum. Heading into 3, it might be better to undercook this one a little bit as in go in just a little bit slower, because here you can tell where the track tightens up, like we talked about earlier on the track map with the shape of the track being different right there. You can feel it tighten up in that corner. So coming into turn 3, it kind of tightens up a little bit sooner than it does in turn 1. So you'll start riding towards that wall, and you have to be pretty aggressive with the throttle in one sense. You have to go ahead and commit to it to get the car to keep rotating. And if you're late on the throttle or don't give it enough throttle, then the car just kind of stays going a little bit too straight and you can smack into that outside wall. So I'd say for that corner, it's probably best to go in just a little bit easier and get the car rotated and turned down before you really start hammering on the throttle. The last and final thing that I'll bring up today would be tire wear, because it does matter here quite a bit. The best thing you can do to save your tires is to just not overdrive the car the whole time. Be a little bit less aggressive with your corner entries and your exits. And if you roll into the throttle, so if you're gentle with kind of feeding the throttle back into the car, it seems to cooperate better because you're not picking up any weight off of the front end by just full hammering back on the gas. And the car just seems to respond better. If you're really aggressive on the high side, you'll kind of wear out the right side tires a little bit. But it doesn't seem to be too detrimental. I struggle to save tires if I run the low side more. I tend to burn off the right front more. So that's why I kind of tend to stay on the higher side. And it works out fine for a medium run. I didn't really start falling off real bad until about 20 laps into this race. Ideally, if you're running the top side, you're going to be more reliant on the right rear. And if you're running the low side, you're going to be more reliant on the right front. So you can kind of find a balance. You can go low for a couple laps and run high for a couple laps and try to find that balance between keeping time and keeping pace, but not burning your equipment up. So always a fun bet. Might take a race or two to try to figure out that balance. At the time of recording this video, I'm still working on trying to find that balance. If you made it this far, I'll go ahead and say be careful on your starts and restarts. Especially on restarts, people don't expect the cars to be quite as slippery, but they are. The track gets hotter and you're on colder tires if you made a pit stop, so it gets pretty loose, so be careful on your restarts. And with that, thanks again for 100 subscribers. I really appreciate all you guys being here and watching these. Hope you learned some more tricks for the track and that they're helpful. Let me know in the comments below how your race week is going, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you and have a great day.